All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking an absolute biological thriller. We're going to look at a tiny, stealthy invader that executes what is arguably one of the most complex, relentless heists on the human body found anywhere in nature. We're talking about Ancylostoma duodenale, which you might know as the old world hookworm. This is basically a microscopic mastermind, and it targets populations across tropical, subtropical, and even temperate regions of the globe. And let me tell you, the sheer scale of its operation once it gets inside the human body is nothing short of terrifying.
Okay, let's dive right into this. 28,000. Now you might be wondering, what exactly does that number mean? Well, that isn't the population of a small town, and it's certainly not the total number of parasites in a given region. 28,000 is the staggering number of eggs that a single female hookworm can lay inside a human host. And here's the kicker, that is not over her entire lifetime. That is every single day. It is an absolute factory of infection operating completely silently within the gut, securing the next generation of this incredible biological heist.
To really understand our invader, we have to start with its name. Ancylostoma actually comes from the Greek words ankylos, meaning hooked, and stoma, meaning mouth. It was originally discovered way back in 1843 in Italy by a scientist named Dubini. Now, biologically speaking, it's what we call a monogenetic parasite. All that means is it completes its entire life cycle in just a single host, us, humans. There are no intermediate animal hosts required here. Once it's inside, it absolutely thrives in the small intestines, specifically preferring a section called the jejunum. But honestly, it'll set up camp throughout your entire upper small intestine.
Section 1. Anatomy of the invader. Before any major heist begins, you've got to do a weapons check, right? So let's take a closer look at the morphology of this worm to see exactly how it's armed for the job. And fair warning, this is where it gets incredibly visceral. These small, cylindrical worms are naturally pale pink or a sort of grayish-white, but very often they appear reddish-brown. Why? Because they are literally full of ingested human blood. It's like a tiny vampire, and this perfectly illustrates their primary weapon, the mouth. Interestingly, it's not at the very tip of their body, but directed dorsally, so it actually bends backward. Inside that prominent mouth is a buccal capsule, which is heavily reinforced with a hard, chitin-like substance, kind of like a crab shell. It's armed to the teeth, literally. It has 6 weapons in total, 4 ventral hook-like teeth and 2 dorsal knob-like plates or sharp lancets, featuring a median cleft. It is perfectly, ruthlessly engineered to bite, latch onto your intestinal wall, and drink.
If we look closely at the crew pulling off this heist, there are 2 distinct players. The male worm is a bit smaller, coming in around 8 to 11 millimeters long. His defining feature is actually at his posterior end, an umbrella-like structure called a copulatory bursa. This bursa is equipped with fleshy rays used to grab hold of the female, plus 2 long retractile bristle-like spicules. Now the female, who is that absolute egg-laying powerhouse we talked about earlier, is larger, about 10 to 13 millimeters long. She has a blunt postanal tail and intricately coiled ovarian tubes that take up almost her entire middle and hind sections. And, in a totally bizarre twist of nature, during copulation, the male attaches his bursa to her vulva. This means the pair literally join together to form a highly recognizable, Y-shaped appearance.
Section 2. The elaborate human invasion. So we know exactly what they look like, but how do they actually break in? This life cycle, which was brilliantly worked out by a scientist named Luce in Egypt back in 1898, is just a masterpiece of parasitic engineering. It all starts with the stakeout. The eggs are passed in human feces and land in warm, moist, shady soil. Within just 48 hours, they hatch into tiny, first-stage rhabdiform larvae, which basically just hang out and feed on soil bacteria. Fast forward 7 days, and they molt twice, transforming into infective, third-stage phyloform larvae. At this point, they're about 500 to 600 micrometers long, with sharp pointed tails. And here is the incredibly tense part. They completely stop eating. They can survive out there in the soil for 5 to 6 weeks, quite literally waving their tiny heads in the air or climbing up blades of grass on thin films of water, just waiting for bare human skin to brush past. Actually, they do have a kryptonite though. Direct sunlight, drying out, or salt water will easily kill them off. But let's say they do find some skin. A bare foot, a hand, a leg. The infiltration immediately begins. Using oral spears, they pierce right through your skin or your hair follicles. Then they slip into your microscopic blood vessels and lymphatics. They essentially hijack your circulatory system, riding it all the way up to your heart and then straight into your lungs. They break out of the pulmonary capillaries into your lungs' alveolar spaces. From there, it's a relentless upward climb. They crawl up your bronchial tree, up your windpipe to the trachea, traverse the epiglottis, and cause an irritation that naturally makes you cough. And when you cough, you unknowingly swallow them, sending them right down your esophagus and into your gastrointestinal tract. I mean, what an insane visceral journey. All of that just to reach your gut, where they undergo their final molds to become adults.
Section 3. Wreaking havoc inside you. Now, what's really interesting about this is that once they arrive in the small intestine, the physical journey is over, but the actual damage phase of the heist has just begun. For the next 3 to 4 years of their lifespan, they establish their territory. Notice how the clinical symptoms map perfectly to the parasite's physical location during the invasion. We actually see 3 very distinct phases. First, the invasion phase. As they break through the skin, they trigger a hypersensitivity reaction, this intense itchiness and a rash commonly known as ground itch. Second, the migration phase. As they travel through the lungs 1 to 2 weeks later, they cause pneumonitis, a dry cough, a sore throat, and wheezing. And finally, the establishment phase. They clamp onto the intestinal mucosa. The major pathology here isn't just a stomachache. It's massive blood loss leading to severe iron deficiency anemia and protein malnutrition. Oh, and a totally fascinating side note. If larvae are accidentally ingested orally on contaminated food, instead of coming through the skin, it bypasses the lungs and causes a rare acute reaction called Wakayama syndrome, which gives you nausea, vomiting, and hoarseness.
And all of this damage leads to what has got to be one of the most jaw-dropping symptoms in all of medicine. Because the parasite is literally bleeding the host dry of iron over months and years, the host develops profound iron deficiency anemia. And this lack of iron can trigger a very real psychological and physiological condition called pica. What is pica? It's a bizarre, overwhelming urge to eat soil or dirt. Just think about that for a second. The parasite steals so much of your iron that your own brain tricks you into craving the very dirt that the parasite originally came from. It's like a giant, terrible puzzle falling right into place.
Section 4. Diagnosis, treatment, and prevention.
But hey, this biological thriller absolutely does not end with the parasite winning. Humanity has developed some incredibly sophisticated ways to strike back, track the invader down, and completely foil the heist. Unmasking the invader does require some serious clinical detective work, though. Doctors use tools like direct microscopy to find those tiny, oval, segmented eggs hiding in stool samples. To figure out exactly how bad the infection is, they might use the Kato-CAD smear to actually count the eggs, or they'll use culture techniques, like the Harada-Mori method, to physically grow and identify those infective third-stage larvae. Blood tests will also flag the specific type of anemia it causes, along with a massive spike in eosinophils, which are your body's dedicated parasite-fighting white blood cells. And because hookworm eggs look confusingly similar to a bunch of other parasitic eggs, cutting-edge DNA-based PCR tools are now being developed so we can get flawlessly accurate diagnoses.
So the crucial point here is, despite the absolutely terrifying complexity of this microscopic heist, stopping it is incredibly reassuring and remarkably simple. The antidote is highly effective. A single dose of common antiparasitic drugs like albendazole or mebendazole, or even a short 3-day course of purantyl pamoate, just wipes them out entirely. To heal the lingering damage, patients, especially highly vulnerable groups like kids and pregnant women, are given iron supplements to rebuild their missing hemoglobin. But honestly, the ultimate defense against this whole ordeal is just basic infrastructure and good habits. We're talking about preventing soil pollution by using sanitary latrines, and simply wearing footwear or using gloves if you're a farm worker. By just putting a basic physical barrier between your skin and the soil, those little infective larvae are left waving in the air with absolutely nowhere to go.
It really is a testament to the wild, brutal, and incredibly complex microscopic world that is happening right beneath our feet every single day. A world where these tiny creatures undergo absolutely impossible journeys through our blood and our lungs, all just to establish an empire in our gut. So I'll leave you with this thought. Next time you're out enjoying a walk barefoot in some warm, moist, shady soil, will you remember those 28,000 eggs? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.